want to back up for a second because Trudeau had another problem on his hands between India and Ukraine and this Nazi they dug up. And that is about a week ago, they called it the Million Person March. I don't know if there was quite a million, but boy, there were tens, maybe hundreds of thousands all across the country, a lot in Ottawa, a lot in Toronto. We had 14 journalists in 7 different cities covering these folks, and it was about parents and their kids worried about their children of tender years being taught radical gender ideology, being taught they can change their pronouns, change from boys to girls and girls to boys. And you can be tolerant of different sexual orientations for grown adults making their own decisions, but the focus on young kids, I think, is what really prompted parents to become protesters for the first time in their life. And the organizer of these massive protests was actually a Muslim man. And I think we saw members of the Muslim community and other immigrant communities who were generally a little bit shy about joining protests. It was a very multiracial, multicultural protest. And I think the iconic image for me was a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, holding a sign over her head, going from memory, it said something like, "Don't trust anyone who says to keep a secret from your parents." And
Right.
we used to teach that to kids. Don't take candy from a stranger. Don't keep secrets
Right.
from your parents. And now the schools are saying that. Here's my point, Manny. Justin Trudeau put out a tweet
Yes.
condemning, I'd say there was at least 100,000 people across the country, maybe more. And many of them were ethnic minorities who traditionally are liberal. He called them transphobic, homophobic,
Yes.
hateful.
Sure.
And in a way, that's just as big a crisis as his Ukraine or his India stuff.
Yeah, no, he does this every time. And I don't know why people are not calling him out on it. If you have a million people, let's go back to the protest, the truckers' protest. One Nazi flag, and there's some discussion of whether it was planted by a liberal or not, but let's forget it. That one Nazi flag was enough for Trudeau to paint the brush that everyone was a Nazi, everyone was bad. All these are good people trying to get some and following good science, but he paints the brush. And yes, with this million person march, Ezra, in addition to what you said, what's more important than the teachings of kids is the inserting government between parent and child.
Right.
I think that was the biggest issue. It was, the teaching stuff, we'll get into that, but please do not come between father and child or
Right.
mother and child.
Right.
And that's what the Muslim community, the Christian community, and normal people say it's wrong. But now, because we say we don't want government we don't want our child to be taken away and hidden from us because they might say something to a advocate teacher and we lose custody of our child. That's horrific. And we're entitled to talk about that. It's the same thing with respect to the vaccines. It was clearly proven that vaccines at the time when Trudeau trampled on truckers' rights did not stop infection. So it's okay to say, wait a minute, I don't think these vaccines work. And they were all labeled Nazis, anti-science, and he does that. He takes, perhaps of the million march, there may have been one person or two persons or a few persons that were just evil and transphobic, and that becomes all. And he does that every time. And it's just annoying because it ends proper discussion. And if you don't have proper discussion, you don't have good ideas. And if you don't have good ideas, you don't have good policies. And if you don't have good policies, you don't have a good country.
Yeah.
And he does that.
Now, I noticed yesterday that a prominent Muslim Affairs Council put out a statement basically telling Trudeau to stop insulting their members who were worried about this sexual ideology. And listen, it's just a tweet and it's just a statement. And I put it to you that most Muslims don't follow their official political leadership any more than more Jews or Italians or Greeks do. So
Right.
I wouldn't overstate the importance of it, other than Trudeau has had a lot of the Muslim vote locked up for a few elections. It was sort of his counter approach to Stephen Harper, really had the Jewish vote and the pro-Israel vote. And I think Trudeau said, I can't beat Trudeau. I mean, Trudeau really thinks about ethnicity in voting. I think that's why we got into the pickle with India and the Sikh extremist issue. I think it's why Trudeau cozied up to this Yaroslav Hunka, because he thought, well, there's domestic politics at play. And I think Trudeau really emphasized the Muslim community, and it was very successful for him. And now he's calling them homophobic and transphobic. And I think for the first time we're seeing a pushback. I think Trudeau is in trouble at home and abroad. Manny, I remember when Trudeau would get in a pickle, and he would fly down to New York to give a speech to the UN, or he would fly off to some meeting, and he would get all the love. He would sprinkle foreign aid around, and everyone would love him, and he would be away from those pesky reporters and the troubles of home. Now, whether it's at home and the trans issue, or abroad and he's stunk up the joint on foreign affairs, or this latest thing, I think Trudeau is actually a bit miserable. I don't think he's having fun anymore.
He has no place to go.
Yeah.
He has no place to go. I mean, if in Canada, I mean, the media doesn't show this, but I see it on the internet. When he goes to a meeting, there are hundreds of people yelling terrible things at the prime minister. And every event he goes to, he sees that. When he goes abroad now, the last G20 meeting, he was pariah. He met, the media didn't report, he met with no one. He met with I saw the few people that he met with, and I couldn't even name you the countries. So he is a bit of a pariah. People have understood. Ezra, with India, which is a huge thing, you did make a good point that the world is moving away from China to India. India is going to be perhaps, I'll call it, the savior of what could be if China becomes a world leader. India is the great counterbalance to that. Yeah. We need India on our side. And Trudeau, for his own political gain, decides to throw India under the bus for some obscure little issue. Now, Ezra, India has the common law, and Canada has common law. It dates back to 1215 Magna Carta. Very simple. And Trudeau doesn't understand what it is to be a Canadian or be a rights advocate. We saw it with the vaccines and so on. We saw it with the Emergency Act. But now he's doing it to India. Ezra, you know this, and most lawyers know this, that there are many principles that stem back to 1215 Magna Carta. And one of them is that the accuser has the right to see the case, and the accuser is entitled to a speedy trial. And the reason why we have those protections, if someone is falsely accused of something, they don't want to be the community being preyed upon and pointed and finger pointed. They want to clear their name as soon as
corpus
possible.
Is what you're talking about. That's the Latin word. Show me the body. Do you have the body? Show me the proof. That's what that means in Latin.
Right. So here now he gives an allegation that we've never seen in history, unprecedented. Prime Minister ends up in the House of Commons and blames India for a murder. And then he says the next day, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You cannot. If you understand natural justice, it goes back to 1215. India has it. We have it. UK has it. America has it. If you lay an allegation against someone, you have a duty to lay out the whole case, and you have a duty for a speedy trial, because you can't leave these people hanging. He's leaving a whole nation of 1.5 billion people hanging. He makes this terrible allegation, then walks away and says, I'm done. I don't want to tell you about it. They're entitled to it. India's entitled to every bit of information. We're entitled to it. We need to know right away, because we need to clear this.